Hey, Blockhead Traders. Here at Blockhead Traders, I must inform you that we are not financial professionals. Nothing we say should be considered financial advice. We offer our own thoughts and opinions to you, the viewer. We expect you to take these opinions and form your own financial opinions and make your own financial decisions. Today is Wednesday, March 30th, 2022, and this is Blockhead Traders Weekly. In this week's episode, we are going to continue on our crypto gaming series, taking a look at some newer or other different crypto games that are out there. And I'm going to be joined by fellow Blockhead trader Viper XL 007. But before we hop to this week's content, I want to give a shout out to our Discord. Link in the description below. You can hop in there. You can say hello to myself, Viper, a couple of other Blockhead traders. Let us know what type of content you want to hear about. Let us know what you want to see. Let us know what you're trading. Love to hear from you. You can also find a link in the description below to thetagang.com/sprocket888. It is where I post each and every one of my equity transactions on there, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So in this week's episode, we are going to take a look at some various other crypto games that are out there in the market. Some of them Viper is playing, and some of them have yet to be released. But before we talk about those, a very relevant story surfaced yesterday about a Ronin blockchain attack that was relating to a crypto game called Axie Infinity. And we wanted to bring this story up because, one, it just happened. It's relevant. It was an exploit and an attack basically against a crypto game that is out there. And so what actually happened is this game, Axie Infinity, was run by a company named Sky Mavis. And it sounds like, I don't know a lot about the game. I've never played it. But reading the story here on The Verge, it sounds like they ran their own blockchain, the Ronin blockchain, to basically support this game. And the blockchain was a proof of stake chain. And so we've talked about that before. That is where you have certain nodes, which are dubbed validator nodes, and they have to put up some sort of collateral or something like that to be appointed a validator node. And you need a quorum, essentially, or a majority of those validators to agree on a transaction. And as soon as that happens, that transaction is so in the ledger. Well, in this particular case, it sounds like all of the validator nodes of the Ronin chain, or nearly all of them, were actually created and run by the game company Sky Mavis, who actually created the game Axie Infinity. And in reading the story, they talk about somebody lifting out 173,000 ETH tokens, as well as 25 million USDC. But when you start to read how they did this, what you basically find is the private keys for 4 of these validator nodes were disclosed. That were those nodes were run by Sky Mavis. And then they also were able to get control of the private keys of one of the community-run Axie DAOs. And so there was only 9 total nodes in the validator network for this chain, and the bad guys had 5 of them they controlled. So they had over 50% of the validator nodes they were in control of. So essentially, whatever transactions they wanted to appear on that ledger, they could make happen because they controlled the 51% or more of that blockchain network. And we want to bring this up because this was actually something Viper and I talked about in one of our Intro to Crypto series about, hey, what are the valid attacks that have been successful? And this 51% it's an attack that is legitimate attack. And if you can control 50% of the nodes, you can make whatever transactions you want to appear on there.
Yeah. And I mean, this is, like Sprocket said, exactly what we talked about back in the series of, going through blockchains. What is a blockchain? What are consensus models and algorithms and things like that? And like he said, Ronin, because Axie Infinity. So I mentioned Axie Infinity in the last episode as the game that opened my eyes to what crypto gaming could be. So I did play it, but I played it months and months ago back when I started on Ethereum, and I stopped playing because the gas fees are crazy stupid, like we've said. So Sky Mavis made the Ronin bridge and then later the Ronin blockchain because of those crazy high ETH gas fees. And so they basically created this as their own private layer 2 scaling protocol. Like we've talked about Polygon before as being like that, but Polygon is much bigger and much broader. But this was a specific game network for a game that was logging its transactions onto the Ethereum network, but using that layer 2 scaling protocol to be able to do it much cheaper and then kind of, batch jobs out to the main Ethereum network. But this is exactly the main issue with especially a small chain. And this is also why it's hard, and nothing's impossible, but insanely improbable for someone to take 51% of Bitcoin or Ethereum or even Avalanche, since we talk a lot about the Avalanche network. So real quick, a comment on Avalanche. They do a very different consensus model that they created where there is no 51% attack on Avalanche. It actually is an 80% plus that you would need to control in order to do this to the Avalanche network. And that's because their consensus model, instead of validating the majority, they save a lot of time by taking transactions and then they randomly select across the entire network. They randomly select a small subset of nodes and say, do you guys all agree to this? They do. Then it's taken into the blockchain. And so it's a little different consensus model that actually makes it slightly more secure. But if somebody gets 81%, it's still the very same thing. So this was very unfortunate, but it shows the risks that are out there for sure.
Yeah, and actually I'd kind of call out the temporary, they basically locked down the blockchain and froze all transactions, basically denying new ones from coming in until they kind of got this under control. Reading between the lines here, it looks like they messed something up in Sky Mavis. They were experiencing some very rapid growth and load. And so it sounds like they did some sort of temporary system in place to allow the scaling of this heavy load. And they just left a bunch of permissions on there, which tells me they probably left these keys sitting around and they were easily gotten. So I doubt it was a complex hack to get. But the interesting temporary countermeasure that they're going to do is they're going to increase the number of nodes for each transaction to 8. So, they can't trust, 5 of their nodes, but now if they replace those nodes and then boost the consensus to 8, you now need 8 out of 9 to complete that transaction. Of course, if people just leave these keys laying around, it's not going to help too much. But yep, wanted to bring this one up just because it was relevant and interesting, and it is a realization of a real attack.
And the last thing I was going to say is Axie Infinity is no slouch. Currently, they have a market cap of $677 million. They are one of the largest, currently what people might call blue chip games on the Ethereum network. So this is definitely a big deal.
So Viper, let's jump over to a different crypto game. And I think you wanted to take us in a game called Hoppers?
Indeed. Let's hop over. So this is a game. I mean, I'm in a number of games currently, but so we went into Chikn for all the reasons we talked about on the last episode. Hoppers, by comparison, is entirely brand new. It's only a couple weeks old. However, they're doing some things that I find incredibly encouraging. Taking a very ingenious approach to sustainability to be a mainstay like Chikn is clearly on the path for at this point. And they're doing some things very different to Chikn with a couple of similarities to it. So I wanted to kind of go through that. And then also I have, just like we did with Chikn, I have some daily chores that I need to do with my hoppers, with my frogs. And that just kind of showcases what this looks like to play this type of game. So if we get hopping, we land on this mint page, which obviously is no longer applicable, but we can see there were 10,000 mints, and they minted at a 1.75 AVAX. So had you been here on mint day, this would be a mint button and you would have just minted your frogs and off we went. However, I did not mint, and I actually thought I was going to pass on this game because I don't know. There's a lot of games right now and they're just a ton of chicken forks, and you gotta watch what you get into, because you'll just get lost, get rugged, all kinds of stuff. So I thought I was going to pass on this. And then I actually started seeing a bunch of people talk about it. And then I dug into it and I was like, holy cow, this is actually pretty awesome as far as the tokenomics of this. So I actually came in here to the marketplace. There was a brief pause right after they launched. They had to redo something in one of the contracts, which caused a little lull in the NFT price here. So I actually came swooping in, grabbed myself a couple of pretty decent hoppers. And my current batch of hoppers are these three guys right here. We got this pukey guy, whatever he's doing. We got this tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, maybe. And then we got this warning klaxion leopard gecko looking guy. And I'll get into some more of these, like their stats and things like that. I actually started with 5, and then I was able to sell 4 of them at a decent profit, and I grabbed these 2, which I'll explain why I traded for these 2. So number 7405 here is my only remaining original guy.
OG.
Yeah, he is. So what do I mean by tokenomics and why that attracted me so much? So we talked about it with feed, with egg, utility, supply and demand, and inflation. These are all things you need to, be aware of when going into these games. Does the protocol have a sustainable way to handle inflation? Because a lot of these games are inflation machines. I mean, chicken, you stake a chicken, you get egg. Everybody gets egg. In this case, you stake a frog and you get fly. And so when you're constantly emitting this token into the public, you need to have mechanics in place to deal with that inflation so that the price doesn't just... And so going into this game, there's a ton of very clever protocols, which are not new mechanics in the world of DeFi, but they're new in the way that they've tied them into this game. So let's take a look at what that means. You get your frog and you go to this adventure page here, and there's several adventures you can choose from to send your frog on: the stream, the forest, the swamp, the pond, the river, the Great Lake, and the breeding pool. So you stake your frog into one of those adventures. And it's important to note that these adventures are tiered in that 3 of the adventures, pond, stream, swamp, are what are considered tier 1 adventures. In a tier 1 adventure, there is no minimum level or attribute requirement. Every single frog that ever lives or exists can enter the pond, stream, or swamp. However, the pond favors the strength attribute, the stream favors agility, and the swamp favors vitality. I won't go through all of these, but tier 2, you now have a minimum level of 10 is required and a minimum 5 strength and 5 intelligence to go into the river, which favors intelligence and strength for a bonus fly earnings. And then we go through tier 3, tier 4, level 15, level 20, and more minimum attributes are required. So my strategy in the very beginning when I learned this page here was I said, okay, here's what I want to do. I want to pick up 1 frog because we do also have the breeding pool, and there is a fertility stat on the frogs, and all stats are ranked 1 to 10. So I was like, all right, I definitely want to be able to create tadpoles, because right now there's not a lot known around the mechanic of the tadpole other than they're going to be key to season 2 of the game. So my strategy going in was I was like, all right, I want to make sure I have a 10 fertility frog for breeding so I can get some tadpoles at the best possible chance. And then I was like, well, then I also, let me filter the marketplace. So in the marketplace, you can filter based on stats. So I filtered the marketplace for 5 to 10 of each of these stats: agility, vitality, intelligence, strength. And I was like, let me pick up a tier 4 frog, and then I'll work to level him up to 20 and beyond. And now I'm set. I can, with that tier 4 frog, I can participate in any single adventure that I want. And then those other frogs that I ended up picking up were opportunistic on the price dip. And I just tried to focus on one strength on those. Like, okay, make sure he's got like a 10 in agility and a 10 in vitality and a 10 in strength, or something close, 8, 9, or 10. So that way I could maximize the tier 1 pools. And that was kind of how I started. So what this all looks like, currently I have 3 frogs staked, and they are earning fly. I have my tier 4 frog actually does his best work in the forest, which is a tier 2 adventure. So I'm not even using him for the tier 4 Great Lake adventure. But he is valued pretty high because he is tier 4 qualified. So whenever I want to go sell him, I should be able to strike a pretty premium over what I bought him for, which is great. And then let's keep him where he's earning the most fly. And then my other 2 frogs are here in the pond because they both have, if we look on the stats, they both have a 10 in strength, and the pond favors the strength. You can see the second frog here has a 10 in fertility. So when he's matured, I can send him into the breeding pool and have a chance at some tadpoles. So as we can see on this page here, we see the rate at which they're earning fly. So this guy's earning 7.87 fly per day. This guy should be similar, 695. And then my tier 4 is hauling in 23.34 fly per day. Some of that is related to the adventure he's on. Some of it is related to his level. There's a lot of details in here as to what's going on. So all of this is kind of, well, let's get into some of the tokenomics here. So one of the first points that I was like, oh, that is clever, is this number right here, 25.06 out of 25.5. What the heck does that mean? Well, that means that at every level of frog, you actually have a maximum amount of fly that you can earn at this level. So this is kind of brilliant because you can't just idly sit on one level forever and just constantly emit new tokens. You can only go, in this case of this frog, 25.5, before he freezes up, stops doing anything, and I must level him up, burning 9 fly to level him up. And the cost of this goes up every level. Levels go all the way up to 100. And when you get to 100, you still have to level up. You just do what's called a rebirth, where you go back to 0. And when you rebirth, every single one of these stat columns gets a +1 boost up to 10. So 10 stays there. So with that alone, I was like, well, that is clever. That definitely solves some problems of these play to earn games with inflation. But is that enough? Well, then they have this voting mechanic over here. Now, this is something that I'm 90% sure that the developers of this game pulled from one of my personal favorite DeFi protocols called Platypus. But the main thing to note here is you get these fly tokens that you've earned, you stake them, and when you stake them in here, you earn this new token called VFly. And what's special about VFly is this token is non-transferable and it holds 0 value. So this token only exists, and I'm accruing it based on how much fly I have staked. So currently I'm accruing it at 1.008 VFly per hour because I've staked 72 fly. As I stake more fly, this will accrue faster. So what the heck is the point of a token that you can't spend and you can't transfer to anybody? Well, you use that to get an earnings boost. So you can come over to the vote page here and you can actually use your VFly to cast a vote on the particular adventures you would like to see get a fly boost. a bonus percentage in your earnings. And so in the white paper or in the Git book, they break it down as to how much bonus is available per adventure. And then basically what happens is you get an earnings. So you can see right now, I only have 9.62 votes on the pond. Spoiler alert. These games, you gotta balance taking profits and working back your return on investment. So I actually had around 200 fly staked in here. I was getting 3 V fly per hour. And I had a significant number of votes in here. It was upwards of 250 votes, I think. So I was getting about 110% boost on my fly earnings because of those votes. As soon as you unstake even one fly, you lose all your votes and you have to start over. But that's the price you pay to take profits. So I took those 200 fly out. I sold them at a nice price. And I logged that profit, and that brought down my ROI. Like I said, in these games, you can't lose sight of taking profits because everything's a risk. And but anyways, for the tokenomics, this is very strong because you stake fly in here, and that takes it out of the circulating supply. And there is a very nice bonus for casting these votes, which I'll show you in a minute. So that's the gist of the tokenomics. So all of this combined is what pushed me to get involved of like, no, this is pretty strong. And if we take a quick look at the price chart, we can see how it's holding up. We go back here at token launch. So first of all, any new token that's hyped, and this was a very hyped project, any new token that's hyped gets a spike at the beginning. So they were no different. They spiked on their launch from 34 cents all the way up to 70 cents. A 2x spike is actually fairly conservative in this space for a new token launch. And then you can see this first exponential curve is in any popular game that involves a newly minted token emitted over time. This is also very common that you get a mountain climb here exponentially. And then we also get the pullback. I mean, this is all price action economics 101. So that is to say, if we look at fly, what's happened after we got the pullback? Well, we started to get some fairly healthy action. I mean, this is still early, so who knows? But to me, a bump like this, a second bump here, and coming back down, I mean, this is fairly healthy action here of, the tokenomics are working. Obviously, there's going to be a point where it's just in everybody's interest to sell and take these profits. Strong tokenomics recover. And so that seems to be what we're getting into now is more of stability, which is good. And the developers of this game are not shy about saying they are all engineers. They are focused on gamification and game theory. So they will make rapid changes as needed to support this game. That being said, let's run through some quick actions here. So I currently, if we're looking at these buckets here, this guy is almost filled up, 18.89 out of 22.5. This guy is basically filled up, 25.1 out of 25.5. And my tier 4 guy, he's still got 10 fly to go. But I'm going to level him up anyways. We're just going to do all 3 because he's going to require 16 fly. I'd rather just handle that now than wait for that last 10 fly to trickle in. So we'll come out here and do our little, so this is all of our pond flies and our forest flies. We can go ahead and claim these. Okay, so we're claiming those. I am getting fly into my bag, and it was around 32 fly, I believe. This will update here to show 0 fly as soon as this second one finishes claiming. And while we wait on that, let's go back over to the hoppers and let's do some leveling up.
So are you actually leveling up the individual attributes or just the overall frog?
So this one is the overall frog. So he's at a level 15, and I will keep leveling up the frog in general up to level 100. Once I get to 100, when I level up again, then he goes back to level 0, and every stat gets a 1 stat bump. So the only way to increase your stats by 1 is to go to 100 and then rebirth back to 0.
So basically those
And
stats are features of the NFT generation. They're not,
Yes.
you can't harvest them. That's just the way that particular frog was created.
Yes. And just like we've talked about before, when I level it up and I increase this, I'm actually upgrading the NFT itself, and that will carry into the marketplace, make the frog more attractive to other people trying to buy, all that good stuff. So currently 8 fly is required to take this guy up to level 16. So let's go ahead and bump that through. This guy takes 9, bump him. So here's interesting. I ran out of fly.
Uh-oh.
16 fly required. I currently have 15.61 fly available, but he does still have 10 fly remaining to get to his cap. So I'm well within my threshold here of being able to do this and get what I need. I just upgraded these guys, so they now have empty buckets. 24 is his max, and 27 is his max. So for the viewers, we're gonna drain this fly. This 15.61, we're taking it all the way out. So let's go over to voting. Let's do some voting. I'm gonna take all 15 of these fly, and this is calculated. So the last thing I want to do is stake all my fly and then run out and not have enough fly to level up somebody. I mean, you just go buy fly on the market and you can resolve that, but that's not the point of the game. Earn what you earn and use it. So I'm good. I'll get the 16 fly that I need for that tier 4 between my 3 frogs. So let's take all 15 of these and let's go ahead and stake them. So we can see now I'm doing 1.218 V fly per hour. And if we go over to the voting page, I currently have 12.519 votes available that I can cast. So just to see this impact in real time, because this will be a notable uptick. I'm, doubling my votes here. I have 9.62, and I'm going to put them in. I'm going to put these votes into the pond frogs here because I really want to bump them up. Like I said, this tier 4 guy, he's pulling 23. And these guys are slouching behind. So 8.29 and 7.37. Just kind of remember those numbers. We go over here. We drop in 12.532. So now I get a bonus based on what percentage of the total votes. There's currently over 150,000 votes cast in this adventure. I can stake claim to just over 20 of them, 22.152. So I'm a tiny percentage, but whatever percentage of the total votes are, you get a bonus based on that, which is why I targeted this pond pool. I kind of changed my strategy a little bit because this has the less number of votes, which means I, over time, should be able to capture a larger percentage of these and thus get a bigger boost. So this first one was 7 point something or other. 7.6 or something. So now he's 8.08 and this guy is now 9.09. So you can see that was a notable boost, and that was a fairly low number. Like I said, I used to have 250 votes on this thing, and both of these frogs were over 15 fly per day. So it can be nicely rewarding. And every level you go up, you do get a per day boost in your earnings. And I think that's the game.
Nice. That's it's kind of neat. I like the aspect of, hey, you actually have to kind of do something every so often to these things, or they just kind of stop working and stop generating fly. So it kind of forces you to tend to it a little bit, which is an interesting aspect that you kind of called out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, like I said, there's a whole roadmap, just like we talked about Chikn, the roadmap. There's not a lot known about the roadmap other than how extensive it is. Like we saw with Chikn actually defined what their major things are going to be. The developers for Hoppers just released some parts of the roadmap shaded out, but they had connections drawn. So like you saw Tadpole, and you saw Tadpoles connected to 3 different branches of what's coming next. And currently I do not have any tadpoles because so my 10 fertility guy, He currently has a 34.65% chance of producing a tadpole, and it does cost 10 fly, which is, gets burnt when you enter the breeding pool. So I would like to get this guy to 50% or more before I actually try to go get a tadpole. The way the game is structured, if I get him to level 100, because he has a 10 stat in fertility, he will max out at a 90% chance of producing a tadpole up there at level 100. So when I get him to level 100, I suspect I'm going to pause for a minute, even if he stops earning fly, and I'm just going to hit the breeding pool as many times as I can to hopefully start milking out some tadpoles, so that way I'm ready for whatever tadpoles do next. And you can see tadpoles are for sale in the market. You could come buy them. 0.83 is the floor. The very first tadpole ever sold for 20 AVAX.
Whoa.
Honestly, I think the guy that bought it is a very well-known guy in the community of Avalanche, and he's a whale, has a ton of money, and he just does all kinds of generous things to support the Avalanche community. So I'm 90% sure he's the one that bought that, and I'm 90% sure he bought it, and he would have bought it no matter what price somebody put on it, because it was a celebratory. This is the first tadpole ever in existence. I don't think there was a number on it. Maybe it was tadpole number 1, but I think he just did it. Just, kudos to whoever bred the first tadpole. Everybody knew it was way overvalued, nice. But somebody got 20 AVAX off of it.
So Viper, we were getting ready for this episode, and I'm like, oh, I got to look up what the heck this game is that we're going to talk about that you play. And I couldn't remember it. I remembered it had something to do with frogs. And so I thought, I'm going to Google this. And so I Googled frog crypto game. Viper, I didn't find this game. I found 6 other frog crypto games.
Yes.
Pixel Frogs, Frog Game, Frog.game. I don't remember what all of them were. Frog Land. How on earth is a normal human supposed to screen some of these games? Because I'll be honest, I'm kind of a little bit spoiled with Blockhead Traders Discord, where I got tipped off by you on some of these games, and I maybe didn't do a lot of my own due diligence, but there's a lot of games like this out there.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a very important message to anybody following along. Just like you said, I mean, you couldn't even find this game, and yet you still found 6 other games. Nothing against those other games. I literally know nothing about them. However, the current time that we're in crypto, you can't just expect to jump into crypto and have a good time like we've explained with Chikn and Hoppers so far, because rugs are everywhere, and scams are everywhere. And, like you said, there is no where do I find games, or, game listing of here's trusted games or anything like that. The reason I was comfortable suggesting Chikn to you was I've been in Chikn, and here's a key. Chikn's been around a long time in crypto terms, and I've been in the community for a long time and interacted with the developers, and, form and listen to a lot of AMAs that they do, where they're talking about their vision and their values and what they're going for and all this other stuff. And right now it's work. And, being spoiled by a Discord community that's not one of these games like ours, is I would say the most important thing right now. So I find these games because so now that I've gotten into some stable games, trustworthy games, as much as anything can be trustworthy, and then there's random chat channels in there where people are just BSing back and forth and chatting. Did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? And then I start, like I said in the last episode, I got to know Chikn because people were talking about it. They were like, did you hear about Chikn? Did you hear about Chikn? So then I started going down the rabbit hole to learn it myself because I heard it talked about a lot in a very organic way. And over my time hopping through these Discords, I started to see the same users over and over. And there's actually a handful of them that I've become internet crypto friends with. And we actually have yet another Discord server that is like this hangout clubhouse of, there is no shilling. There is no like, oh, check out this game, or like pushing people to a game. It's just all of us are doing the same thing, evaluating the landscape. You still can't inherently trust anybody, but we share what we find as we find it. And, it's just the more eyes, more ears. And so to me, it's the power of Discord and these communities that get formed, which could be scary, but it also, is like we've talked about, it's kind of that throwback to old chat room internet days. And there's a lot of cool community that happens around that. And then over time, you start to learn who's who of the gaming space. So Hoppers is actually created by a handful of very well-known influencers of the Avalanche network. So that is to say, they have a lot riding on this game with their reputation, with what they've been building for themselves in that reputation on the network. Still, I can't stress it enough. Nothing is fully trustworthy. Projects go through things like they KYC, or they'll dox themselves, or they'll try this or that. But a lot of that ends up being marketing, because I have seen countless rugs. I think I've only been involved in one rug, but there's certainly plenty of stale projects that just haven't gone anywhere. And I've witnessed from the sidelines tons of rugs, some that I actively avoided because I was like, something doesn't feel right about this. I'm not getting in this. And I have yet to see a single auditing company do anything about it. So, and what I mean by that is when people KYC, they go to an auditor company, a middle person, and they show them their ID, they show them their information, and they hold it in secret and say, if you do something wrong, we're going to release your information. I have yet to see that ever happen. So it can be an important security, but it just hasn't revealed itself. So to me, it's that power of community and also getting to know the space deeply. And like, that was how I was able to decide to jump into Hoppers, because there was, that community of influencers that built it. Yep. And I mean, the one cycle of due diligence that has helped me a lot. All these projects live and die by their Discord and their Twitter. So the three things I always check when due diligence on a project is, one, I check out their Twitter feed, like how long have they had Twitter? What do they post about? What do they say? Does it feel spammy? Does it feel bot-y? And then I go to their Discord. I join the Discord. I, get a feel for days if I can, weeks if I can, monitor the community, what's happening here, how active are the developers, all that kind of stuff. Check out their website. And usually by that point, you get a decent feeling one way or the other. You're still not guaranteed in any way. And so then we get to what we've always talked about with risk mitigation, risk tolerance. And so I'll kind of, on my own, I'll gauge like, well, how much do I want to trust this? How much money do I want to put on the line? Assuming that I lose it all. And so therefore I risk mitigate, risk tolerance, and I don't bite off more than I'm worth losing, which that should sound familiar to the fundamentals that we go by. And I am actually involved in building a project where we are trying to create a community for developing this information, not as a source of this is the trustworthy place, but just as that source of together we can help weed out some of the crap. It reminds me of like the old Dig Nation website, where amazing stories got voted to the top of the list, and you could always trust that what's at the top of the list is interesting, at least in the case of Dig Nation. So, but it is very, very Wild West right now. And for better or worse. But that does mean opportunities abound.
So, I kind of want to ask one last question here to you. A lot of these games, the hoppers, the chicken, they seem very, I'm going to call them passive or static, right? But it just seems like, you think of the original side-scrolling Nintendo games, right? They were very basic. Pong, for example, in an Atari case, right? I feel like this
Yes.
is just the start of a potential gaming. I mean, are there other games out there that are maybe a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more gamey like, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's um, very true of these games. And I classify these games as a DeFi protocol with a gamified interface to it. Because like we said, like I showed with hoppers, there's so many mechanics of it that you see to a T on something like Platypus. And Platypus is literally nothing more than a stable coin staking platform. Let's equate that to a very stable yield investment, in the stock market or something like that. But they use that VFly or VPTP in their case, but they use that mechanic, and that's a purely DeFi protocol. So these are like DeFi protocols with gamified interfaces. And like you said, I see these as just a stone skipping on the water. Like I think these could be around for a while, but certainly, their time is limited, like you said, as more real games, we'll call them, make it to the space. And so what do we mean by that? There's actually one to call your attention to that we can take a quick look at here. And I mean, there's a number of them. So I'm just picking one, and I am self-servingly picking one that's on the Avalanche network because for reasons we could do an entire video on, the Avalanche network to me is a very game-focused future blockchain. Nonetheless, this game called Ascenders, Explore, Fight, Build, coming soon. So this is actually a game that's being developed. If we go down here and look at the team, which if you can get team information on a project, that is very big. We can see that we have this confluence here of a crypto native entrepreneur as the CEO and co-founder, and we have the merging of some true game development veterans from Ubisoft, EA, Rockstar North, Capcom, who have worked on titles like Ghost Recon, Aliens vs. Predator, Dirt, Transformers, Grand Theft Auto, BAFTA award winning. So, I mean, high credentials, the kind of thing that we want to see from what we would know as a AAA game on our consoles. So real quick, Ascenders, there's a little minute teaser video. So we'll actually just roll that real quick just so you can get a feel for the world that they're building. And then we'll kind of wrap up, what I think that means. So take a look at this. So what you can see there is there's not a lot other than, a guy running around. But what we can really focus on are the graphics, the mechanics, the battle, the fight mechanics that we see there. That's all very familiar. You could see that trailer in any other space and be like, that looks like an interesting game. And you wouldn't think anything about the blockchain. So the game itself, and this isn't a white paper. This is just their light paper. But highly recommended. Again, any project, read their documentation. And I'm not going to read all of this, but this paper goes through what their economics are. And the game itself is going to be an open world RPG style game. And you're going to have dungeon crawls where players can challenge deep dungeons for rewards, resources, etc. The game is going to be based around these three classes of people: explorers, fighters, and builders. So this game will have NFTs. It will have character NFTs. But one of the cool things they're doing here is obviously they want to build the game first. So I actually this morning listened to an AMA from the developers of this game. It was awesome because, they said a lot of what we see we call it the GameFi space. So that DeFi protocol with a gamified interface, Chikn, hoppers, that's GameFi. They said a lot of what we see in the GameFi space is people ask you to buy an NFT before you ever play the game. So you're investing money and you haven't even played the game yet. And they said that just doesn't feel right to us. We want to build the game, let people try the game, and then decide if they want to get into it. So they're building the game first, but there will be NFT characters should you decide to like the game and want to get deeper involved. And there will be land NFTs. So if you're a builder, you might maybe try to buy some land and then develop your land with something like a forge, let's say. And that forge can create swords. All weapons and assets in this particular game are going to be player generated, which is really cool. Which means the game's not just going to fill the market with swords that you can go buy. You players have to create them. So explorers will go out and they will go through the fields and the huge world and get the resources to build a sword. Then maybe they go to a builder's land and they go to their forge and say, Sprocket says, I got all this material. I want to build a sword. And I say, hey, give me 10 X tokens and you can use my forge. And so then he uses the forge and he goes to the marketplace with his sword. And a fighter says, I need a sword. And so he buys that sword from Sprocket and he goes on his dungeon quests and he levels up that sword. And maybe he levels it up to a higher value. He goes and sells it in the marketplace, et cetera, et cetera. So a very cool approach here to a familiar style game, open world RPG, MMO style game. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is, kind of circling back to what we've talked about on the previous episodes of, why are we talking about this on this show? And it's all about opportunity and, investment opportunities, risky or not, that's up to you to decide if it's within your risk tolerance. But to me personally, this type of game, we'll call it the AAA game, is the real boon of crypto gaming that has yet to get here. And within risk tolerance levels, which is to say not mortgaging the house to jump into this stuff. Same rules that have applied in equities applies here, but I'm trying to stake a high risk, high reward bet on some of these games that fit X criteria to me. And some of the reasons are actually captured nicely here on this light paper of what this opportunity could look like. Just going through these 3 bullet points here, the number of active blockchain games increased 90% year over year. That comes from the DApp Radar data source. Number of daily unique wallets interacting with game-related smart contracts surged 1.3 million last year, a 46x fold increase over the 28,000 from 2020. So we went from 28,000 wallet interactions to 1.3 million. That comes from the Massoit data source. And the blockchain game industry as a whole is already valued at $1.5 billion a year. And we obviously know how massive traditional gaming is as an industry, just like we talked about on the previous episode, microtransactions, all that kind of stuff. When I see this collision of player-driven economies and high-quality games, I see an opportunity that I'm personally interested in taking a gamble at. And so that's kind of why we ended up here, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about that opportunity. And I kind of go back to gaming has always been huge. I mentioned this before, and Look at what the Wii did, the Nintendo Wii, for market share and growth of the gaming. Yeah, traditional gamers might have balked at the Wii, but investors look at the market share, the growth that came from that. And you're talking about intersecting again some very unique aspects. And that's why it's interesting to Viper and myself, is there is tremendous growth potential here. And anytime you have tremendous growth potential, you could have very good return on your investment. That brings us to the end of this week's episode. We kind of hope you enjoyed the little look at a few other crypto games there, hoppers. You know, the little discussion there on how to kind of vet and think through some of these things, as far as how do you decide where do you put your money, where do you not put your money, a little discussion on that, and really that kind of sneak preview on where gaming kind of might go from here in the crypto world. And so I'm excited to kind of see that. I kind of like the passive games that we kind of have going now. They kind of remind me of the Tamagotchis of my younger days. And we got one more kind of episode that we're going to go through here on this topic of crypto games and different spaces that we're kind of looked at. And it's going back to the Chikn game. So Chikn is actually expanding itself in the next couple weeks. This says tomorrow, March 31st, but they've already delayed this into, I believe, April 14th is the next date. But they're bringing another aspect, another vector into the Chikn ecosystem, and that's Rooster. And they're going to be minting Rooster. And you're going to mint it by, turning in eggs, and you're going to get these Rooster NFTs. So Viper and myself are pretty excited. We've been stockpiling eggs, preparing for this Rooster mint. And so that's really kind of the next thing that's going to be coming up. And we're going to jump back to this when it happens. We're going to try to record an episode of the Mint live, where we're going to do some of the minting there, grab a couple NFTs, and we'll talk about it, and we'll go into some of the aspects there. And that's all we have here for this little mini crypto gaming series, Rabbit Trail. So I hope you kind of enjoyed it. I encourage you guys to check out these games. I think I'll take a little look at Hopper, although I'm kind of vested in the Chikn farm for now, and I think that's going to be my crypto gaming fix. I'm just not. I got my capital limits that I want to deploy places, and right now, Chikn's where it's at. So good luck out there. I hope you guys can find some enjoyment out of that, maybe even get in some of that space. Hop in our Discord. Tell us what you jumped into. Tell us what you're seeing. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, good luck out there. Have fun. And remember, think outside the block.